I know what you're saying to yourself, RGT. Why in the name of all that is holy did you upload a video at 1 a.m. Eastern time today? And that is because I am an idiot. I was not home for most of Monday. I thought that video was scheduled for Monday, and then I received a DM late at night from a viewer saying, hey, no video today. And I was like, well, there should have been. And then I figured out that I never hit publish on the other video. So if you missed that video, go watch it. We talk about some pretty interesting things on there that, I mean, at least I found interesting. But today we're going to be talking about a topic that a lot of people have already covered, but I want to look at it from a different lens and a different perspective, and that is involving the Nintendo Switch 2, because late last night or early morning, depending on where you are, we got the updated financial report from Nintendo themselves talking about hardware sales and software sales and stuff like that. And you could sit there and go over the numbers, and I guess some people would find that interesting. But to me, the more interesting thing are some of the stories interweaved within the data itself. Because honestly speaking, I don't think people really anticipated these kinds of numbers. Maybe your extreme fanboys who think everything is great and everything is awesome that Nintendo does. But the more realistic people, they thought there could have been a bump in the road with this. So I want to go over this stuff with you, talk about some different perspectives, and hopefully you enjoy the video. Hit subscribe if you are new. Now, first and foremost, the Switch 1 has outsold the Nintendo DS at over 155 million units. I don't care. Like, I am so over the Switch 1. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. But that's cool, man. If you're still plugging away on your Switch 1, hey, you know what? You outsold the DS, and that's pretty cool. I do wonder if Nintendo ever makes just like a super cheap Switch 1. Like, it's kind of weird that that doesn't exist already. Just some sort of like 2DS option with it, you know, almost like a Switch Lite, but like cheaper materials and stuff like that. Because you could easily sell a couple million, especially in this economy and how everything is going right now, in a pretty reasonable amount of time and become the best-selling system of all time. But, you know, Nintendo's gonna Nintendo. I mean, they raised the price of the Switch 1, you know, last year, so maybe that's not in the cards. But the Switch 2 was going to be a more interesting story because there were some doubts with this system, especially going into the holiday season. Now, we all know that it was the fastest selling system in the first couple of months, and we got that data, and everyone was like, well, that's cool, but it's going to be interesting to see the holiday season. And then we, of course, got all these reports coming out about the, you know, the lackluster system sales during Black Friday. It was the lowest ever since it was started to be documented in 1995. The PlayStation 5 outsold the Switch 2 for a month and stuff like that. So it just seemed like, you know, things were becoming more realistic with the system. You look at the lineup of games, obviously Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World were the big titles, and some of the other titles for a lot of people were mostly, you know, just there, you know, decent titles if you're a fan of the genre or the franchise or something like that, but nothing that's really going to move the needle aside from Pokemon Legends ZA, but that had a Switch 1 version. But Nintendo has announced that they have now shifted over 17.37 million units worldwide since June of 2025, with like a sell-through rate, I think, of over 15 million. So you can't really say that stuff is just sitting on the shelves or anything like that, because they've sold a vast majority of them. And it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. It is still on track to be the fastest selling system of all time. Now, some people like to look and say, oh, well, it didn't do as well during the holiday season, during its first holiday season, comparative to the Nintendo Switch 1. The Switch 1 had better hardware sales overall during the holiday season. And that's not incorrect or anything like that. But to me, that makes perfect sense. You had a brand new Zelda, you had a brand new Mario, you had a brand new Splatoon, all within like the first year of the Switch 1. The Switch 2 like I've said before, like the software isn't exactly lighting the world on fire for a lot of people, but it seems to be resonating with enough people that the system is still selling. Now, obviously, if you're just selling a hardware and no software, then you just have a weird situation, but we've got updated sales figures for software as well. And that's kind of where another story is. So Mario Kart World, Jesus Christ, 14.03 million. Now, obviously, some of that, probably a good portion of it is the pack-in bundle that was offered, but still, like, that's insane. Donkey Kong Bonanza at 4.25 million. Pokemon Legends ZA for the Switch 2 specifically, not including the Switch 1, nearly 4 million units sold. And Kirby Air Riders at 1.76 million units sold. Y'all disappoint me with that. That's not a great game. But conspicuous by its absence is a certain game that released on both the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2 in December, and that would be Metroid Prime 4. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Metroid Prime 4 is a flop or anything like that, but we do know that Nintendo only reports if a game has sold over 1 million units when it comes to a first-party title. Now, Kirby Air Riders did come out before Metroid Prime 4, but it was only by like 2 weeks. And so with that additional 2 weeks, they sold 1.76 million units. And Metroid Prime 4 on both the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2 did not hit a million on either platform. I find that very odd for the Switch 1 considering the install base, but it's kind of one of those things when you're at the tail end of a system's life cycle, it's not really fair to sit there and say, oh, well, they've sold 155 million units of this system. That means that Metroid Prime 4 is going to sell a gajillion units. And it's like, I think my biggest problem is I thought Metroid Prime 4 was good, but not great. But you had all these Metroid Prime fanboys and Metroid fanboys in general saying how great the game was doing, and I've got inside information, and it seems like your information sucks. Your information is wrong. You need to just shut the hell up. But people still listen to these people because, I don't know, I guess they don't know any better. But 4 of those games being over 1 million sold already, considering the fact of how Nintendo kind of handled the rollout of these games and stuff like that. Like, I think it's pretty impressive. People are buying software for the Switch 2. People are buying software from Nintendo on the Switch 2, the better stuff. They're not buying the Drag X Drive, which I'm very proud of you guys with that. There were some additional updates as well. Super Mario Party Jamboree sold nearly 770,000 additional units. Tears of the Kingdom sold another 250. Breath of the Wild sold another 300. Spoiler alert! To all those people that said Tears of the Kingdom was going to outsell Breath of the Wild, you are wrong again. You will always be wrong on that because anyone with a brain could have seen that coming. But it's weird how Nintendo does that because if there's like a Switch 2 edition, you don't really hear much about it because I guess there's so many different ways to buy it. And if you buy the $80, physical version of the game, that's counted as something. And then the digital upgrade is counted. I don't know. It's very strange to me. But all in all, I didn't really expect 17 plus mil because they're going to hit their 19 million in the first fiscal year. They wanted to do 19. They upgraded it to 19 between June and the end of March. This, of course, is up till December 31st. And I didn't really see this coming, man. And realistically speaking, they did this with like a handful, really just 2 major games. I guess you could count Legend ZA as well, but that was a cross-generational game. You could buy it on the Switch 1. So realistically speaking, as far as games that are only on the Switch 2 from Nintendo, Bonanza and Mario Kart World together nearly sold 20 million units. And it's like, we are not talking about a new Zelda, a new 3D Mario, stuff like that. That's really going to do some crazy numbers. So, you got to give it to Nintendo, man. You got to give it to them. Like, this is working. People are buying the system. And you know, rightfully so. It's a really great piece of hardware. Like, and I think the future is going to be very kind to this system because you don't have some of the same pitfalls that you had on the Switch 1 with like third-party games just being severely downgraded and stuff like that. It's much more manageable with this system. So that's the latest news. I'm sure we'll get some stuff coming out about the Q&A section. I can't wait for that, so we'll talk about that whenever it happens. But that's what's going on, man. Definitely a bit unexpected for me, but maybe you expected this. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think of all of this stuff. Do you think Metroid Prime 4 is in trouble? Because Metroid games usually don't have legs because of the fact that, you know, people are just buying the games when they first come out, like we saw with Dread, and then it just fell off a cliff. But what do I know, right? I'm just someone who's been covering video games for a very long time now. And what do you think about the staggering Switch 2 sales? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. I'm thinking tomorrow I'll be back on camera. The beard is almost at an acceptable level to be showing my face. If you do follow me on Instagram, you would have seen the updated story that I did with my non-beard face, and I hate it. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like the video, dislike the video. I don't care. Just interact with it somehow, some way. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.